There's a building in Flatbush, Brooklyn that looks like it belongs at Oxford. Limestone carvings, Gothic towers, oriel windows, crenellated parapets at the top like a small castle. If you saw it on a postcard, you'd assume it was a university, somewhere with tuition that costs more than a house. It's not. It's a public high school. Open to everyone, built in 1905. Now, drive about 15 minutes away and look at any public school built after 1955. It's a beige rectangle, maybe 2 stories, flat roof, small windows, or sometimes no windows at all. It looks like a warehouse where they store office supplies. And here's the part nobody talks about. Those 2 buildings were built by the same school system, for the same kind of student, in the same city, about 50 years apart. Something happened between 1905 and 1955, and nobody really voted on it. The question is what? The man who built that Brooklyn school was named Charles B.J. Snyder. From 1891 to 1923, he was superintendent of school buildings for New York City, and in those 31 years, he designed more than 400 public schools. He called them cathedrals of learning. The journalist Jacob Riis wrote about him at the time. He does that which no other architect before his time ever did or tried. He builds them beautiful. Snyder didn't take a single vacation from 1904 until he retired. He invented an entire school floor plan, the H-plan, just so kids in Manhattan could get sunlight into every classroom. He put playgrounds on the roof when there was no room on the ground. More than half of his schools are still in use today. They are some of the most beautiful public buildings in New York City. And his philosophy was deliberate. A school building, Snyder believed, should tell every child who walks through the door that their education matters. The carvings, the towers, the courtyards. None of it was decoration. It was a message. Even if your family came off a boat last week and you don't speak English yet, you matter enough that the city built you a palace to learn in. That was the idea. That idea died. And it died for 3 specific reasons, all of which collided inside the same 20-year window. The first thing that happened was a man named Walter Gropius. In 1937, Harvard hired him to run their graduate school of design. Gropius had founded the Bauhaus School in Germany in the 1920s, and the Bauhaus had a doctrine: ornament was a crime. Historical references were dishonest. Beauty was a leftover from aristocracy. A building should look like exactly what it is and nothing more. Within 10 years, every elite architecture school in America was teaching some version of this philosophy. A whole generation of architects came out of Harvard, Yale, MIT, and Columbia trained to see the kind of work Snyder did as embarrassing, decorative, old-fashioned, naive. But ideas don't build schools. Money does. And the second thing that happened was the baby boom. Between 1945 and 1964, American families had so many kids that the school system almost collapsed under the weight. K-12 enrollment was expected to peak at 37 million in 1957. It actually hit 51.4 million by 1971. 45%, almost half, of every public school building still standing in America today was built in that 20-year span. Ray Heyman, the federal official in charge of school housing in 1950, warned that the shortage threatens to become chaotic unless immediate and drastic action is taken. Districts had a choice: build them beautiful or build them fast. They could not do both. And then came the third thing, which is the one that locked it all in place. October 4th, 1957. The Soviet Union launched Sputnik. The country panicked. People decided almost overnight that American schools were failing, that the reason a Russian satellite was orbiting overhead was because some teenager in Iowa hadn't done enough math homework. Congress passed the National Defense Education Act in 1958, and for the first time, federal money started pouring into schools at scale. But here's the part most people don't know. That money was for science labs, language labs, defense readiness. It was specifically not for school construction, not for limestone, not for towers, not for anything you could see from the street. By the time the Elementary and Secondary Education Act came in 1965, federal funding had reshaped what schools were for. They were no longer civic monuments. They were inputs to a national defense calculation. So in 1961, when Nelson Rockefeller proposed that New York State just use the same architectural blueprints on every site, nobody really fought him. The Ford Foundation funded a project from 1962 to 1967 called the School Construction Systems Development. Prefabricated parts, identical schools deployed across California first, then everywhere. The goal, in writing, was to build cheaper and faster. The result, which they didn't write down, was that every school looked like every other school. A child walking into one of them learned something different from what Snyder's kids learned. They learned that their education was a logistics problem. The buildings Snyder made are now landmarked. The ones that replaced them are being torn down. And the research that's come in over the last 20 years on natural light, on biophilic design, on how the shape of a room changes what happens inside it, has quietly admitted what Snyder knew in 1891. New York City data shows kids are 12% more likely to fail a test on a 90-degree day than a 72-degree day. Classrooms with natural light produce measurably better cognitive performance. The windowless schools of the 1970s, built for energy efficiency and security, were actively making children worse at learning. We had it figured out. 120 years ago, an architect with no vacation and a city full of immigrant kids, we had it figured out. And then in about 15 years, between Walter Gropius arriving at Harvard and the first Sputnik orbit, we forgot. Not all at once. Not because anyone voted on it, just 3 things lining up at the same time in the same direction. And once they did, nobody ever quite figured out how to turn the country back around. The cathedrals are still standing. We just stopped building new ones. If you like this, go watch Why America Stopped Building with Brick. You won't regret it.